I'm David. Hi.
Hello, I'm Greg Owen.
And we're at the second European ChemSex Forum in Berlin. Were you at the first one, Greg?
I was at the first one. I came shooting across in a taxi from the BBC studios. Actually recording a ChemSex piece with some people from Mortimer Market. You remember when we did that big ChemSex thing? Yeah, just before Let's Talk as well.
The whole world is ChemSex. Every day is ChemSex. Well, it is for me. You have a lot of PrEP days, I believe.
My whole life, 24/7, morning, noon and night.
So listen, if I am ChemSex and you are PrEP, what happens when ChemSex and PrEP get together?
That's a good question. I think a better question is what happens when ChemSex and HIV get together without any PrEP. And we know what happens, because that environment gives rise to, it's very opportunistic for HIV infection and all STI infection. So having PrEP there gives you that, removes kind of the big STI. I know we have to be concerned about hepatitis C as well, but having PrEP in a ChemSex context for me is a win-win. We all know that behavioural change sometimes, if you want to change your behaviour, it can take a little time, and some people don't want to change their behaviour, which is just as valid. And so I think allowing and providing PrEP in those situations and circumstances at least takes care of someone's HIV status while they figure some other stuff out.
Fabulously said. I think, well, we know that people who engage in ChemSex are the highest risk for HIV acquisition and transmission in the developed world. And what do they need, probably above, I won't say above all of, but they absolutely can benefit from PrEP. ChemSex isn't always, a lot of people are very cognitive when they're engaging in ChemSex of what they're spending and how they're going to feel tomorrow and every action they take and the consequence, but not all of us are that brilliant. And sometimes we're not always thinking about condoms. Sometimes, as you said, you don't want to. You're in that heady environment. And PrEP and ChemSex are a perfect marriage, no?
They are indeed, and I think biggest barriers for me, well, first of all, we always talk about kindness, and so what people in those situations need, as well as PrEP and support, is kindness from themselves and from each other. But I think for me, and I'll speak personally because I don't like to speak for the community and I don't like to speak on anyone's behalf, I like to speak for me. And when I eventually decided to go on PrEP, and I was going to have to jump through some hoops to actually get PrEP because it wasn't available or accessible then, I had finally decided to be proactive and responsible, and it was just too late for me. So I'm a prime example of when ChemSex for me was a very specific period in my life, about 2 or 3 years, for whatever reasons, those are personal, but for reasons that a lot of people experience, I spent about 2 or 3 years intensively in that ChemSex environment, and if I just had had PrEP during that time, then I would still be HIV negative now. And it's important to remember as well, I think, when we talk about ChemSex and HIV and PrEP, is that HIV isn't the punishment for having ChemSex. We need to remind, it's just that the circumstances are kind of very, the circumstances that we know a prolonged period of sexual action with those substances, which reduces your sensitivity in certain parts of the body, and there's a lot of trauma in certain parts of the body and a lot of sexual partners. Just those things, we take the moralizing away from it, just the physical scenarios of ChemSex give rise to infection. So I think we just need to bear in mind, from a stigma point of view, that ChemSex or HIV is not the price you pay for ChemSex. So we should leave our morals at the door and just help people have the sex that they want with the least amount of unwanted outcomes.
And PrEP's one way we can do that.
It is indeed.
In some research from Antidote at London Friend in 2013 said that 90% of the HIV positive people engaging in ChemSex support there attributed their HIV diagnosis to chems. And again, not as a punishment, but just as an unwanted consequence. Imagine what that figure would have been if PrEP had been around then.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt statistically it would be lower, but I think we talk about this a lot together when we talk about ChemSex and HIV infection and other sexual related issues, let's call them, or scenarios. And I always think what we do, and particularly what you do, is at the equal sign of a very long equation that came before. And we as gay men particularly very rarely go back and pick apart the components of that equation. So PrEP is great and ChemSex support is great, But I'm really interested in how we help and invest in our siblings before you need ChemSex support, or before PrEP is a lifeline for you, when it's just something that's ingrained in a general, more broad spectrum well-being and a holistic approach to the people rather than the issues. Because for me and my community, what I'm starting to see now that we have support for ChemSex and we have PrEP, which is giving people a little bit of breathing space in their head, perhaps that they might not have had before, is that how do we deal with people now and not issues? Because ultimately, we're dealing with people, and I think very rarely do we look for the person. We're looking at the symptom or the ailment or the issue, and we're more than those.
I think that's kind of gorgeous. If everyone cared about themselves wholly, and others wholly, and their community as a broader concept wholly, then we wouldn't have any of these problems at all, and that's where we can start.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not always the case. It's hard to care about yourself. It's hard to care about others during periods of my life. Me talking about me, because I've spent decades caring so much about my panicky needs in a selfish way, to the point where it blitzed my concern for other people. And that was a part of my ChemSex story. But although I caught HIV long before ChemSex was invented, I think long before drugs were invented, before cavemen were born.
You are old, but you're not that old. You're not that old.
But are you attributing your status to ChemSex?
There's a short answer to this, there's a medium-sized answer, and there's a long answer. I don't know, we've got time.
Which one's he going to give us?
Greg Owen, he likes to talk. Yes, I would say the actual exchange point of HIV for me was in a ChemSex setting.
Okay.
But am I attributing my HIV to ChemSex? No, I'm attributing it to a series of things that conspired for me to find myself in those situations and making those choices.
And that's exactly why the researchers are having problem connecting HIV to ChemSex, because of that very issue. Tracing back to the actual moment of transmission, to the moment of infection, months in advance, and trying to remember whether that was a ChemSex environment or not. And even if it was it that the chems that caused it to happen, or was it, as you say, other ingredients like not caring about yourself or not having the communication skills to talk about status in different environments?
For me, it was I have said this in a radio piece before, and the interviewer kind of was a bit taken back. I stopped caring, and it wasn't that I wanted to catch HIV. There were certain things in my life that had happened, and they were manifesting in different ways, and that kind of behaviour was one of the ways that certain experiences were subsequently manifesting. And for me, I just stopped caring. I didn't care enough to invest in myself. Not even invest, to be aware and look after myself, because I certainly wasn't investing. I was just trying to get by. So that's not just about ChemSex, that's about me as a whole person and how I arrived there. And without going into the big long story, there was a lot of emotional trauma for me in the years leading up to that, and some very, very heartbreaking things. And people have asked me subsequently in media events and community events what I could have done differently that would have A, prevented certain behaviours, and B, maintained my HIV negative status. And the answer is I don't know, because that support, really outside of what we do, what support does a gay man going through those experiences and those things, what support does he have? Who can he speak to? And where can he go? Because even sometimes with our siblings and our community and our friends and our family, we find it very difficult to talk about those things. So what support was there for me? So yeah, there are, now in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. There are things I could have done, but who could I turn to for a little bit of light in that shade, in that darkness, to point me in the right direction? Apart from 5016th Street, which I got an incredible amount of support from, and who I have had consistent support from over the last couple of years. What else was, we as a community don't talk, and we as men and gay men hold on to so much that we don't talk. I think it starts with talking, which leads us seamlessly on to what we're doing tonight.
Tonight is Let's Talk About Sex and Drugs. They don't call it gay sex and drugs in Berlin here. I think the reason they said was they were trying to be more inclusive of a broader population, even though ChemSex is specifically defined by gay hookup culture, specifically associated with the drugs that are available on gay hookup sites, and specifically about the experience and some of the challenges of having sex as a gay man. So it can be inclusive, of course, of transmasculine women, but also trans feminine women, trans feminine people, who use online hookup culture. But I think Berlin wanted to keep it much more inclusive about just drugs and sex generally. And we're going to that tonight. Are you going to be speaking at it?
I am. I'm going to be sharing some witty ditties. Is that a thing? Like, is anyone under the age of 50 ever said that?
Hashtag.
Yeah. No, don't hashtag. Hashtag Greg Chats, not hashtag witty ditties.
Chaps.
No, Greg Chats with the T. Greg
I didn't know that.
Chats,
Greg
not
Chaps.
Chaps.
I know the Greg Chaps one.
Well, you've seen the pictures and the videos. Actually, they do exist. Don't dig them up. So we're going to Let's Talk About Sex and Drugs tonight, and I will be sharing some personal stories of sex work, ChemSex, London life, PrEP, my former super slut status, because let's embrace the slut pride. I would dearly love to be in the throes of those situations again, but I'm bracing myself for the summer. I'm going to break my second virginity. Are you getting a bit hot and bothered? Is it your age, or is it my sexual
You just lost
prowess?
me. You're talking about sex positivity. I'm stopping the flirting because talking about sex positivity, some people think that talking about chemsex at all is a threat to concepts of sex positivity and gay sexual liberation as we know it. What do you have to say about that?
You know what? It's like sex is a really personal thing, and it's really like the sex I have with guy A, B, or C is always different, and the way I negotiate that sex with guy A, B, or C, it's different people. Like, sex is not just like an activity by numbers. It's not like going to the gym where you have your workouts. It's going to be different for every person. It's going to be different for where you are in your life, from who the last person was, from what you want. From sex is like an expression of person. And so it's always going to be different. So to the people who bang on about... almost swear it didn't. To the people bang on about shit like that, that's almost the alt version of sex positivity. It's like, people are really taken back when they find out I haven't had sex in... like, I've had 10 minutes of sex in almost 2 years. People are like, oh, yeah, I know, the S word. They're just like... they're really taken back that I kind of am in a place where... not finding it easy to do that. It's not that I'm not sex positive, it's just that that's not what I want right now. And it's, okay, my life is kind of a little bit strange at the minute as well. But I almost feel sometimes shamed for not being this super slut anymore. And it's not that I've gone, oh, I'm better than that and I don't want that anymore. It's just that for where I am, for me in my life right now, is that disposable sex like that is great, and it's really horny, and it's like really, like, I loved all of that, but I've done every version and shade of sex, and now I want something a little bit different. Like, I really want to stop looking for sex and start looking for people again. Yeah,
that's really nice. I think for the people that I work with and the people we know who are trying to make changes around chemsex, it's kind of understanding that kind of sex, which is quite a shift.
It's a shift, but it's scary because, like, I've just started back to the gym, and it's not that I'm like a body fascist, and it's not that I set body standards for other people or myself. It's not. It's when I'm in a situation, like, currently I have to pick what outfit I wear because I have a little bit of a belly, and my arms, I think they're a little bit skinny at the minute, and I'm not overly self-conscious, but I have to pick clothes that I know look good for the body I have right now. And I never had to do that, and I resent that restriction, so I want my freedom back. So the gym, for me, is not about, being that blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white muscle boy that we see all over the pages of a lot of our LGBT magazines. It's not about wanting to obtain that. It's about me feeling comfortable in my skin, where I can take my clothes off, be it whatever shape, when I'm not apologizing for doing it at work. And I haven't found that in this body. So there are my personal things going on, and also to get naked and to start being intimate with someone totally sober, which I had some amazing sober sex with the last guy I was seeing. He knows who he is. He'll probably watch this. He shall remain nameless, but good sex, babes. And it was totally sober. We didn't drink and we didn't do drugs, and it was really passionate and intense, and I loved him. And it was, yeah. So for me, that was the last kind of
Can I
Yeah.
ask more about that? And
Yeah.
if he's watching, thank you for making my friend happy.
You know who this is.
Okay, then I like you even more. Was it really? Did you really have to trust that person to?
Yeah.
We feel less sexy sometimes when we're sober, right? And sometimes the only way through is to tell the person with, I'm not feeling it that much, or not, or don't feel as sexy as I would on chem. So that kind of honesty can make it more sexy sometimes.
Yes. So with him, we met on Twitter. We met on Twitter, and I had met him before, but I forgot about him. And then we hooked up to talk about I want PrEP now, some work stuff, and then we ended up having sex that night. But we had quite a lot of banter, and we knew similar people, and we had a very similar idea of what we wanted to do work-wise and in life. So we got an instant connection, and I was able to tell him certain things that I wouldn't particularly share with everyone straight away. We were very much on that level. So yes, I did say, I'm not feeling great right now. I don't feel so sexy, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And I told him that, and also I tried really hard not to fall in love with him. That's the thing, but I did, and I think the thing with him is that he, because it wasn't. I had attached myself to him as a person before I had as a cock or an ass, so I felt safe.
Okay. I had a lot of what I call disposable sex, which is kind of not very respectful to the people that I shared that intimacy with over the years, but it's stuff that I don't remember, that might have been harmful to myself or others, because I wasn't really respecting how awesome sex can be. A lot of it was about, for me, escaping from or needing affirmation, needing attention, needing to be affirmed as a sexy being by my community, because I didn't feel sexy, but I felt like that was really important to be included. So a lot of my sex was a lot of this furious affirmation seeking that by consequence hurt myself and others and did a lot of damage over the years, I think. Certainly led to a lot more drugs. So that's what I mean by disposable sex. So the millions of people I had sex with, I'm not disrespecting you. I just can't remember it.
So I think
I wish I could.
To kind of take the edge off that for you a little bit, I think, because I got called out for calling it disposable sex on Twitter actually, and it's not. To clarify, it's not the people. I think what we mean is it's not the people that we're having sex with that are disposable. It's what that sex means to us.
Yeah.
It's
Was
use
that
it
after
and
we
throw it
spoke?
away. Yeah, I think we spoke about it over dinner, and I posted something, and it did cause quite a bit of a stir. But when I say disposable sex, it's not being sex negative, and it's not having a negative connotation towards anonymous, and I enjoy that kind of sex. I probably will again. But what I mean is, for me, and I think for you, it's the interaction was disposable, not the people.
Yes, I think what I mean is exactly the same thing. For me, it's taking responsibility for the fact that I was intimate with and being vulnerable with other people who were being intimate and vulnerable with me, and I wasn't respectful of that, because it could have been something sacred that I remembered forever that meant a great deal, and it was a kind thing for both of us towards it, and I didn't. I disposed of all of those opportunities. I disposed of every potential that existed in them and just furiously appeased my own needs.
But you paid for that. I mean, you paid the tax on that in the days after, right? At some point, or the years after. So yeah, nothing is for free. Really, even free anonymous disposable sex is not for free. You pay at some point. You pay the emotional tax at some point. But I one thing I will say, kind of to round up my experience in that kind of environment and arena, people ask me what it was like to be a sex worker, and people ask me what it was like to be like quite a hardcore chemsexer, and the whole spectrum of that experience. And I have to say, I learned so much about people, the good and the not so pleasant sides of people, but I wouldn't give that up for anything, because it informed me as a person, and it informed me as a member of my community, and it informed me almost of processes I was working through myself and I could see in others. And there is actually, regardless of the trauma that some people experience in those settings, I navigated that environment very well, apart from some very not great times. But I learned so much about people and about how we interact with each other, particularly as gay men, that I wouldn't give that up for anything. And I had a lot of fun as well. It wasn't all dark. And so I think that understanding and approaching it from that perspective is really key in everything that I do. Is that, you know, I want to talk, and I don't want to judge, and I don't want to, I don't want to give you 12 steps or 7 steps or whatever the hell it is. That's not what I'm about. Like, I would like to hear what it is that's going on.
I think that's why you're such a brilliant activist, actually. First, you've got your own history and the bits and how it's affected you, which you're really honest about. I try to do the same. We're here in Berlin with 250 other people, a large majority, I think, who have very strong opinions and histories within their own shag communities and their own communities. And if we can all be as honest and real and thoughtful and as listening as much as we can contribute, then it's going to be a really good couple of days, I think.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So thank you for the chat.
Thank you for the chat.
This is ChemSex David and PrEP Greg Owen.